Welcome to WatchMojo.com. I'm your host Ashkan, and in today's business profile, we take a look at Procter and Gamble, one of the most successful consumer goods companies in the world. Procter and Gamble traces its roots back to 1837 when William Procter, a candle maker, met James Gamble, a soap maker. Now what's interesting is that the two gentlemen would have probably never crossed paths had it not been for marrying two sisters. In 1837, there was a crisis that basically led the father of the two sisters to encourage the two entrepreneurial young men to connect, unite, and create the company we today know as Procter and Gamble. The 19th century was extremely profitable for Procter and Gamble. By 1859, it had hit $1 million in sales. They say war is perfect for business, and Procter and Gamble was no exception to that rule. During the American Civil War, Procter and Gamble won many contracts to supply the Union Army with soaps and candles. So when soldiers returned home, Procter and Gamble had exposed itself to millions of young men across the nation, further helping their growth. In the 1880s, Procter and Gamble launched a soap that floated on water, going on to become one of its biggest successes. We're talking, of course, about Ivory. Now, by the 1890s, because more and more households were starting to rely less on candles and more on electricity, Procter and Gamble started to focus away from candles to focus more and more on soaps. In fact, by 1920, the company stopped the manufacturing of candles altogether. These days, Procter & Gamble gets its fair share of criticism in terms of its relationships with employees. In fact, one book called Soap Opera totally destroyed Procter & Gamble. But fact of the matter is that the company has always been one of the more progressive ones when it comes to employee relations. In 1887, Procter & Gamble was one of the first companies to introduce profit sharing in order to reduce the likelihood that employees would go on strike. By 1911, Procter & Gamble launched Crisco, a shortening that relied on vegetable oil and not animal fat. In fact, Procter & Gamble has always been obsessed with pushing the envelope when it comes to fat and oils. By 1996, it launched Oleand based on Olestra, something that was far less successful than Crisco, but maintained the company's focus to introduce new and different ways of cooking. After World War II, Procter & Gamble became synonymous with innovation. In 1946, it launched Tide laundry detergent. By 1950, Prel shampoo. 1955, Crest, of course. 1957, Charmin toilet paper. 1960 was Downy fabric softener. 1961, one of its biggest hits, Pampers, and 1972, Bounce fabric softener sheets. At the tail end of the 20th century, Procter & Gamble shifted gears and began to acquire many companies, some of the more notable ones being Folgers Coffee as well as Max Factor. In January of 2005, Procter & Gamble acquired Gillette, making it the biggest consumer goods companies, surpassing Unilever. In 2007, Procter & Gamble ranked as the 25th largest American company when measured by revenues, 18th when measured by profits, and it was number 10 on Fortune's most admired companies.